guys, Menace here, and welcome back to another episode of Kyle is Famous. Kyle is Hotdog DLC, and let's get started. Ooh, I missed the flashlight.
Kyle woke.
Skip, change jobs,
Kyle
embrace
thought
the
very
Christmas
carefully
spirit.
about the.
Hotdog,
Kyle laid in.
skip, start day. Open the closet, choose an outfit.
Kyle decided to take some
become a
time.
Hotdog,
Kyle put on his hot dog.
pack the room, skip to the end of the day. Skip to the end of the day.
Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first outing as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. But as he unpacked, Kyle realized he had not taken the important step of actually acquiring any hot dogs. Kyle knew that in order to continue, he was going to need to visit somewhere close by to try to acquire hot dogs.
Orphanage.
Kyle decided that it would be best to go find some hot dogs at the local orphanage. To boost their monthly income, the local orphanage ran several fundraisers that gave services to the city. Kyle subscribed to one such service. Volunteers would mash the orphans' toys and dead pets together and distribute the paste from a faucet behind the orphanage.
What the fuck?
Residents of the city could pay a subscription fee to use the faucet for a certain period of time every day. Kyle had become a regular paste subscriber to get cheap food, juice, or glue depending on what he needed. Kyle walked behind the orphanage and swung open the faucet, hoping today's slurry was suitable to make hot dogs from. For a moment, nothing came out, but then, with a loud burst, the faucet started spewing out orphans. The orphans had staged an uprising and were escaping through the faucet.
What the fuck?
Finally, free to the world,
Jesus
the
Christ.
orphans rushed forward, crushing Kyle beneath their feet. The orphans knew exactly what their plan was to be. They wasted no time putting it into action. Several orphans quickly constructed a large building. Others called their contacts in the marketing industry.
Oh no.
Within minutes, the orphans had
Oh,
constructed
God.
a large hot dog restaurant. Immediately, denizens of the city began flooding through its doors to buy hot dogs. It was not long before the orphans had completely taken over the local food industry. The reach of the hot dog shop increased. People stopped buying other food. Grocery stores closed. But the orphans were not finished. They soon expanded their business to all outlets. They monopolized insurance, retail, production, art, entertainment, and everything in between.
Huh.
Stay Up Late with Kyle was taken off the air to be replaced with various orphan broadcasts. Soon, everything that Kyle was known for had been replaced with something orphan-related. Nevertheless, Kyle remained famous as the man who released the orphans and was featured in all of the orphan history books.
Hmm.
Kyle did not sell any hot dogs.
But he did. Release the orphans. Apparently. Okay, set to date and
After
okay.
Kyle knew
Made
that in
in
order
warehouse.
to continue, Kyle jumped into action, knowing time was of the essence. He turned around, briefly surveyed his surroundings, and entered the first door that he saw. Kyle found himself in the middle of a dilapidated warehouse that had not seen any humans for many, many years. The warehouse walls were plastered with a thick layer of grime. But Kyle never saw the grime. All Kyle could see were the rats.
Oh no.
Like a bristling ocean, rats covered every surface of the warehouse. Floor, ceiling, walls, and everything in between. Kyle started to grab rats with both hands and shove them into his supply pack. His pack filled quickly. Kyle continued stashing rats into every open crevice. Within minutes, his pack was jam-packed with rats. Satisfied, Kyle made his way back outside. Kyle began
damn
to
it.
wordlessly shove rats toward the passers-by close to him. Most avoided eye contact and steered around him. A few looked at the rat in Kyle's hand and frowned. After a few minutes of trying, Kyle became very frustrated. Kyle grabbed a nearby passerby, wrenched open their mouth, and drew a rat close to shove it down their gullet. But suddenly, Kyle had a realization. It was not the rats that were unpleasant to his customers. No, Kyle had forgotten to create a mascot. "Hey, you," whispered Kyle to the man gripped in his arm. "You're gonna help me." Kyle took the bag of rats and dumped it over the man's head.
Oh no.
The man was buried in the rats. They clung to his arms and legs, creating a makeshift rat suit that covered every inch of his skin. Immediately, the man began to ravenously shill Kyle's hot dog stand to the public. He waved his arms up and down, yelling for anyone and everyone to come buy a treat.
But they're not hot dogs. They're live rats.
But there was a problem. The rats Kyle had intended to sell as hot dogs had already been repurposed. The crowds that had been attracted by the mascot sadly stepped away, knowing they had lost a chance at something wonderful. Eventually, Kyle and the mascot gave up. They returned to Kyle's apartment, heads hung low. Kyle and the mascot tried several times over the next few months. Before they could get their feet underneath them, however, they were written up by the FDA for extremely, extremely unhygienic marketing.
Not wrong.
The mascot was sent to jail. Kyle, being without his partner, decided to give up for good. Kyle nor the mascot sold any hot dogs.
Okay, and then set today and
But Kyle knew.
tech store.
Kyle decided that the local tech store would probably have hot dogs. Kyle skipped inside, looking forward to the lovely interaction that was upon the attendant and him. The store walls were lined with electronic gadgets and apparel, important to each citizen's everyday life. Kyle was amused. He loved Techno Gym. He loved the friendly store clerks. This was a comforting place for him to be. Kyle walked straight into the employees' break room and began rummaging around for things to take with him. Within a couple minutes, Kyle had found a healthy stash of wallets and a phone, but no hot dogs. Kyle pushed past the circle of store clerks, shouting and pounding on his back to look inside the employee fridge. Inside, Kyle found several packed lunches, half-eaten subs, and a few bottled drinks, but no hot dogs. Kyle slid his way through the crowd of employees and law officials and walked outside. The sun was setting, creating a soft glow of orange in the sky. The birds twittered. Kyle lifted his head high and breathed in deeply. He smiled. Maybe selling hot dogs wasn't what was important. The world was lovely, shining. Kyle felt like he needed to appreciate nature. Kyle was flattened by the SWAT helicopter that had been called to stop his tech store rampage. Kyle had been properly stopped. Job well done. The SWAT helicopter flew away. Being now completely flat and also washable, Kyle became the first reusable source of printer paper.
Huh?
Companies rented Kyle for days and months at a time to help increase printer-related productivity and reduce waste. Kyle single-handedly reduced greenhouse gas production by 56%. Eventually, Kyle was replaced with also renewable laser-engraved mold lumps. Humanity flourished.
Kyle became printable. Huh. Okay, now we completely reset. Change jobs. Become hot dog salesman. Skip.
Kyle had
Start day. We open the closet. We dress as a hot dog. We eat our clothes. Okay. We got our hours back. We sit at the desk. We check for the small key.
Kyle grabbed the small key he kept in his desk.
Okay. Back to desk. Back to room. Exit the hallway. Check lock door. Do a hot dog magic.
With a hum and a Kyle
Enter a room, get hot dog stand
started
materials.
looking around for anything he could use to make a hot dog stand. Kyle rooted around the scattered boxes and loose items. He picked up buckets, pieces of wood, rusty nails, and bits of string. Soon, he had enough loose items to be reasonably sure of being able to craft a stand that wouldn't fall over.
Move the kitchen. Check the pantry.
Kyle
Unlock
wanted
with
to
the
access
key.
the pantry, but found it was locked with a small keyhole. The pantry door lock creaked as if it hadn't moved for years, but eventually opened. Instead of an assortment of canned goods and grains, Kyle's pantry stored his massive amount of bottled lard. Kyle grabbed a bottle of lard and stashed it on his person, completely forgetting about the hot dogs that were also in the pantry.
Okay. Skip to the end of the day.
Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first outing as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. But as he unpacked, Kyle realized he had not taken the important step of actually acquiring any hot dogs. Kyle knew that in order to continue, he was going to need to visit somewhere close by to try to acquire hot dogs. Kyle started to ponder what he could do. He stood almost motionless, thinking as hard as he could.
That's never a good thing. Sorry about that. I yawned.
As Kyle thought, his hand brushed against the lard
I know,
bottle in
Kyle
his pocket.
thinking, never a good thing.
Suddenly, Kyle felt inspired. Kyle grabbed the bottle from his pocket. He held it close to his face, inspecting the lard within. It looked beautiful. Kyle felt a leap of excitement in his chest. Kyle uncorked the bottle. He poured the lard on the ground, ready to get to work.
Oh no.
Kyle began to knead the lard into little tubes. He set each tube aside gently, slowly making a row. Soon, Kyle had used all of the lard to create his hot dogs. He stood up and looked across the street, eager to find his first customer. There, sitting directly across from him, was an incredibly successful lard dog stand. Kyle knew this completely doomed his idea. In a horrified stupor, he wandered across the street to look more closely at the stand. It was the famous Lard from Bill, the biggest distributor of lard dogs in the Eastern Hemisphere. Kyle had stumbled across an empire. As Kyle stood gawking at the stand, the lard dog saleswoman noticed him. "Well, hi there," she said, smiling. "What were you looking for?" Kyle slowly looked into her eyes, tears all over his face.
I want to run
stammered
you out of
Kyle.
business.
I will run you out of business. Kyle broke into sobs. The saleswoman watched expressionlessly as Kyle cried.
Good.
"Well, she said, I guess you can try." Her words did nothing to soothe Kyle's soul. He slowly walked away, head in hands, crying constantly. As the evening continued, Kyle calmed down. He thought about how closely he had come to commercial greatness, but it had slipped from his grasp. The next day, Kyle had forgotten about his lard dog scheme, but his creation did not go to waste. A curious passerby picked up Kyle's forgotten lard dogs.
Oh no.
Curious, they took a bite. Within a year, Lard from Bill had been run out by a new business called Lard from the Sidewalk. He did not know it, but Kyle had changed lard dogs forever.
That's just terrifying. Green background. Okay. Okay. An evening green experience. Ooh,
Kyle
that's a pretty
woke
color.
up.
Change
Kyle
just
thought-
become hot
Kyle laid
dog.
it-
Skip
Kyle
the
had become a
dialogue.
hot
Hit
dog.
start day. Okay. Sit at desk. Check in the drawer. for a small key,
Kyle-
back to the desk, back to the room, go to the closet, choose an outfit, become a hot
Kyle
dog,
put on his hot dog suit, which he had made by stitching.
exit the hallway, move to kitchen, check the pantry,
Kyle
unlock a small
the pan-
key,
Instead of an
grab the
assortment
hot
of canned,
dogs.
Kyle. He gathered them together and saw that he had a serviceable amount of hot dogs.
Okay, that's it, so. Oh no, the terrifying thing of you can see when I recorded this. Skip to the end of the day.
Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first outing as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. As he unpacked, Kyle realized he had never gotten a food cart to make his hot dogs in. Kyle had no choice but to place his hot dogs on the ground. Looking at the hot dogs strewn across the sidewalk, Kyle realized he had found a golden opportunity. Kyle began to roll his hot dogs around in the dirt, pressing firmly so it would be embedded into the food.
No.
After a while, his back became sore from bending over. Kyle continued with the bottom of his shoe. Soon, all of the hot dogs had been sufficiently seasoned.
Disgustingly.
Kyle swept his hot dogs into a pile and sat on the concrete next to them. It was a warm day, and lots of people were walking by. It wouldn't be long before someone came over to buy a hot dog. And in a couple minutes, as expected, a figure stepped over and stood in front of Kyle. "Kyle," said Gabby, "what are you doing?" "Gabby, today I'm fulfilling my hot dog dream," said Kyle. "This is my hot dog stand." "Kyle, Gabby searched for a way to tell Kyle gently that he was not about to sell any hot dogs. And then, in a moment of pure compassion and grace,
No,
Gabby decided to
don't.
be Kyle's first customer.
Don't, honey, no.
"Kyle, I want to help inspire you," said Gabby. "How much is a single hot dog?" Kyle wordlessly grabbed a hot dog from his pile, jumped to his feet, and
Apparently
shoved it into
freezer
Gabby's
came with
mouth
assault.
hole. Gabby realized that
No,
the hot dogs were
Gabby,
delicious.
I hit hope.
Driven by pure empathy, Gabby began to grab passers-by on the street and force-feed them Kyle's hot dogs. One by one, the citizens of Kyle's city became embarrassingly obsessed with his hot dogs. As Kyle's pile of hot dogs ran out, the demand for his wares increased. Kyle's hot dogs became a valuable form of currency. They were bought and sold on the international stock market. Men and women were made rich from investing in Kyle's hot dogs.
Terrifying.
Kyle's hot dogs were all quickly snatched by investors. Having nothing left, Kyle decided to go home. As he entered his apartment, Kyle stopped. Today, he had turned over a new leaf. Today, he had followed his dream. Kyle had helped the economy, yes, but he had also grown as a person. Kyle was content.
Forgot to bring the hot dog stand. Okay. Reset. Change jobs.
Kyle.
Hot dog salesman. Skip. Start day. Okay. We open the closet once again. We become a hot dog suit.
Kyle put on his hot dog suit,
We
which he
don't
had made.
eat it. We sit at the desk. Check the drawer. Get the key. Back to the desk. Back to the room. Then we exit to a hallway. We go to the kitchen. We check the pantry.
Kyle wanted to access
unlock the small key.
the pantry door lock creaked. Instead
Grab the hot dogs. Go back. Go back. Go back. Open fridge.
Kyle opened the fridge, intending to find something to eat.
This is gonna be horrifying. Eat the fridge.
Kyle pointed his neck directly upwards and hoisted the fridge on top of his face. Somehow, miraculously, he wrapped his mouth around the device. He started to swallow. In one slow, horrible movement, the fridge slid down Kyle's throat. After many gurgles, pops, and snaps, Kyle felt relatively sure the fridge would not come back out.
Okay. Skip to the end of the day.
Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first outing as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. As he unpacked, Kyle realized he had never gotten a food cart to make his hot dogs in. Kyle had no choice but to place his hot dogs on the ground. Looking at the hot dogs strewn across the sidewalk, Kyle realized he had found a golden opportunity.
Oh, I have to do an order. Oh, that's stupid. Okay, change jobs, become hot dog salesman.
Kyle laid in bed.
Skip, start date, open closet, choose an outfit, become a hot dog. Oh, nope,
Feeling
nope.
it wasn't enough. Kyle continued to eat his clothing.
Restart. Change jobs, become hot
Kyle
dog.
laid.
Skip that. Start date, open closet, choose an outfit, become a hot dog, back to room, sit at desk, check the drawer, a dog is barking, get the small key, go back to the desk, go back to the room, go back to the hallway. My sister's paying my dog, move to the kitchen, open the fridge, eat the fridge.
Kyle pointed his neck directly upwards and hoisted the fridge on top of his face.
Listen to the sliding noise again.
He wrapped his mouth around the device. In one slow, horrible movement, the fridge slid down Kyle's throat.
Yes, I said eat the fridge, and you don't have to. It's the most disturbing thing ever because he eats the fridge, and then you hear the sick jaw-cracking noise, and then something sliding down a wet tube. No, you heard that right. It's gonna get worse because later he produces the fridge. I have no idea what that means. Rico? Well, this is a pudgy man who is a stay up late with Kyle host, and he just ate a fridge. Okay.
After many gurgles, pops, and snaps, Kyle felt relatively sure the fridge would not come back out.
It's gonna come back later, back to the kitchen, check the pantry, unlock the small key, look in the pantry, grab the hot dog, hate my decisions.
After a few minutes of searching...
Okay. Okay, now we skip to the end of the day. Please don't make me relive the fridge again.
Kyle made his way to the street corner. After a long day of preparation, Kyle felt very ready for his first outing as a hot dog salesman. Kyle started to unpack his things onto the corner of the street. As he unpacked, Kyle realized he had never gotten a food cart to make his hot dogs in. Kyle had no choice but to place his hot dogs on the ground. Looking at the hot dogs strewn across the sidewalk, Kyle realized he had found a golden opportunity. Kyle began to roll his hot dogs around in the dirt, pressing firmly so it would be embedded into the food. After a while, his back became sore from bending over. Kyle continued with the bottom of his shoe. Soon, all of the hot dogs had been sufficiently seasoned. Kyle swept his hot dogs into a pile and sat on the concrete next to them.
Produce fridge.
As Kyle sat, something occurred to him. If he were to run a hot dog stand, how would he keep his hot dogs clean and safe to eat?
You just roll the hot dogs in the ground, and then once your back was hurting, you started rubbing them into the dirt with your shoe. They're not gonna be clean. They're not gonna be safe to eat. But at least it's not the rat-infested human as your mascot.
Kyle sat on the ground, feeling a little upset and unsure of himself. But in a sudden burst of inspiration, Kyle spewed the contents of his stomach onto the sidewalk.
Sanitary either.
There, upright, bright in the sun, was his fridge.
Covered in your stomach juices.
Kyle pulled the sticky door open. It was still slightly cold. Kyle thought it would be fine to store the hot dogs. Kyle began to shove hot dogs into every section of the open fridge, storing dozens among the crusted food. Soon, Kyle had stored every hot dog he had brought with him, and his mission was complete. But Kyle did not stop. Kyle started to rip chunks of concrete out of the sidewalk and put them into the corners of the fridge. Kyle continued stashing. Soon, there was no sidewalk left. But Kyle was still not finished. He started to grab at nearby items to insert into the fridge. Trash cans, light posts, and passers-by could not withstand him. All were stashed into Kyle's fridge. A large crater was slowly formed, demonstrating Kyle's ravenous hoarding. It became visible from space. That is when the slug invasion came.
Slug invasion.
They came over the buildings, from the sewers, and sprouted from the earth. This was not a normal slug migration. The slugs were intentional. The slugs were dominant. All of the armies of the world moved to counter the slug invasion. However, the slugs were prepared. The slugs revealed their slug launchers, which fired more slugs. The slug menace began to quickly multiply. The slugs' plan lay in their multitude. No matter how many were defeated, more were produced from the launchers. The battle grew more and more desperate. Kyle looked as the pile of slugs in his city grew larger and larger. The fridge, full to bursting past any imagination, stood by him. It shone bright. Kyle looked upon his creation, a magnum opus of storage. He loved it. It was his. But he knew what he needed to do. Kyle threw open the fridge, sending a shockwave of cement, people, and hot dogs flying in every direction. The slugs, blown away by the outburst of material, were blasted into the sky.
They're slugs. Why can't you just salt them?
Instantly, they vanished from sight. The city looked as if it had never been touched. The slugs had been halted for now. Kyle looked around himself, observing the remains of his beautiful creation. It was sad, yes, but Kyle smiled. He had delayed the coming slug invasion for another year.
Bye-bye. Kyle fought the slugs. Okay, I'm ending that episode of Kyle is Famous, Kyle is Hotdog DLC here. If you guys somehow like this video, hit that like button. Want to somehow see more of this content, hit the subscribe button. Let me notified whenever I upload. Hit that notification bell. In the description, we links to my Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, merch stores, all that fun jazz, along with the game store page and the evil game devs link as well. That man is pure evil. Great game, pure evil. I'll see you guys next time. There's still more of this. I'm finishing Hotdog and I'm not gonna play Santa for a while. My brain needs a break.